computer, and let's open it up. Oh, here we go. Find it. So we left off here, chapter 4. Okay, would somebody like to read chapter 4, number 1? Okay, s'il vous plaît, if anybody would like. Capitolul 4, 1. Not everybody at the same time, just one person. Anybody? Right here. If I try, it's not going to sound right. No.
Ben Zoma spunea. Pot să încep?
Yes, please.
Cine este înțelept? Acela care învață de la fiecare om, așa precum s-a spus în Psalmi 119:99. De la toți dascălii mei am cules înțelepciune, căci legile tale sunt preocuparea mea. Cine este puternic? Unul care își stăpânește propriile tendințe, așa precum s-a spus în Proverbe 16:32. Mai bine unul care este încet la mânie decât unul puternic, unul care își conduce propriul spirit decât cuceritorul unei cetăți. Cine este bogat? Unul care este mulțumit cu porția sa, așa precum stă scris în Psalmi 128:2. Dacă mănânci din produsul mâinilor tale, fericit ești tu și bine ți este ție. Fericit ești tu în lumea aceasta și bine ți este ție în lumea în care va veni. Cine este onorabil? Unul care își onorează semenul, așa precum stă scris în Samuel 1:2-30. Căci pe aceia care mă onorează îi onorez, iar cei care mă disprețuiesc vor fi înjosiți.
Okay. Just going backwards for my sake. So, Ben Zoma says, who is a wise person? First of all, who is Ben Zoma? His name was actually Simon Ben Zoma, Shimon. And he was a member of the high court in Jerusalem, which was called the Sanhedrin. But in his time it was not in Jerusalem anymore, because he lives in the 2nd century after the destruction of Jerusalem and after the destruction of the temple. And Shimon ben Zoma is not called rabbi because he was very humble and he did not want the title, even though he was a scholar. So he was an honorary member of the Sanhedrin because you had to have the title of rabbi to be a real member of the Sanhedrin. There were 2 people like that who were honorary members. One of them was him, Shimon ben Zoma. One of them was also Shimon ben Azai, who were contemporaries. They also lived at the same time as Rabbi Akiba. And if you know the story, the Talmudic story about the 4 people who walked into the orchard, which is a metaphor for a mystical experience, he was one of the 4. So Shimon ben Zoma would say, who is really a wise person? One who learns from everyone. As it says, from all my teachers have I grown wise, for your testimonials are my meditation. So a wise person is not somebody who learned a lot in the past. there are two things you can say about a wise person. It's somebody, first of all, who learns. In fact, he says, who is wise? One who learns from every man. So you can say there are two parts of this. Somebody who is wise is, first of all, somebody who learns. Not who once upon a time learned, but they learn. Just like, let's say, if somebody is a thief, it's not somebody who stole 45 years ago. It's somebody who steals all the time. Because 45 years ago, he might have changed his mind since then. But if he does it all the time, then he's a thief. So what is the person who is a wise person? Who's always wants to learn, who always wants to understand things. So first of all, it's somebody who learns. They learn from books and they learn from life, but they learn. And they also learn from every person. What does it mean to learn from every person? It means to be humble. It means not to be arrogant. Somebody who is arrogant, how do you say arrogant in Romanian?
The same.
Okay. So somebody who's arrogant, they always feel like, I'm so smart, I can't learn from that person. What do they know? I'm a famous professor. I'm a famous this. So, but the wise person knows that you can learn something from everybody and from every experience. So that's a wise person. Number one, who's constantly trying to understand and learn things. And secondly, does not cancel anybody. Everybody has something to teach you. And he derives this from the verse in the Psalms of David, from all my teachers have I grown wise, and your Edut Hashem, which means your testimonials or your laws, are my meditation. So that's number one, definition of who is wise. The next one is, who is strong? I once heard an interesting interpretation, Ben Zoma, from this elderly rabbi, who said there are three things you can learn from Ben Zoma. He said, there are three things you can learn from Ben Zoma. Number one, he said, who is wise? One who learns, meaning that they constantly want to learn, like I said before. He said, who is wise? One who learns from everybody, because that's, like I said before, not just from select people. But then he said, and who is wise? One who learns from everybody to be a mensch, meaning to be a good human being. It's a term we use in Yiddish. It's actually German, to be a mensch. In other words, you learn from everybody how to be a good person. And this is the ultimate achievement. It's like a fellow went to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, went through the whole Talmud. What should I do now? So the rabbi says, well, you went through the Talmud, but how much of the Talmud went through you? So the question is, did it transform you, or did you just read it? So that's number one. Number two, who is strong? Strong, in the Hebrew it says gibor, which means who is the strong man? Who is the courageous person? Who is when we see somebody who's a great warrior or a great soldier or a great general, we say, wow, this is, a very courageous person. They did many things. And Ben Anselmo says, well, who is really the courageous person? Who is the strong person? The one who can overpower their own inclination. The one who can control themselves, control their passions. As it says in the book of Proverbs, better one who is slow to anger than one with might, and one who rules his own spirit than the one who can capture a city. Which means if you're able to control yourself, that's the real strong man. So wait a second, why is that the real strong man? Maybe somebody who captures a city is a strong man. Maybe somebody who can fight 100 enemies is a strong man. Why particularly somebody who can control their passions and control their spirit? The answer is, if you're fighting somebody, you might have certain advantages. Maybe, for instance, you're 30 years old and that other person is 70 years old, so you're stronger than them. Maybe you are 1.80 meters and they're only 1.30 meters. Maybe you weigh 200 kilos and they only weigh 60 kilos. Maybe you have more muscles than them. So maybe you have an objective advantage. So that doesn't prove that you're a strong person. But when you control yourself, then you know that the competition is totally equal. So because it's me fighting against myself. So to control yourself is really, and to control your passions, to control bad inclinations. This means you really have control. Self-control is the ultimate control because the one who you're controlling is your equal because it's yourself. If you follow what I'm saying. Are you following that? So when you control yourself, that's the real strong person because you control somebody who's as strong as you are, yourself. That's the idea. Okay, let's go to the next one. Then he said, so that's a strong person. And actually, this is sort of what it says in the verse in Proverbs of Solomon. Better one who is slow to anger, which means he can control his anger, than somebody who is a strong person who has might. Better one who can rule his own spirit, which means his own emotions and passions, than somebody who can capture a city. Okay, the next one. Who is the rich person? We think the rich person, oh, that's easy. Somebody who has $1 billion, like Bill Gates. That's a rich person, right? You know, when I was a kid, if you were a millionaire, you were a rich person. Well, I don't know. Does that make you a rich person? I think today, even if you have $1 million, I don't know. Yeah, the houses are so expensive. Oh, it becomes expensive. So nowadays, when I was a kid, the rich people were millionaires. Now you have billionaires. I don't even know what they need so much money for. But but Ben Zoma says no. That's not definition of a rich person because you know you can have money and not be happy. First of all, you can have money and not be happy because maybe you have $10 million, but your friend has $20 million. So you feel terrible. How come he has 20 million? I only have 10 million. I do the same type of work. I deserve 20 million. That's not fair. You know, so that's the way people are. The richer you are, you start worrying, you know, that guy has this, that guy has that. And the more you have, the more terrible you feel when it's taken away. If you had $10 million and something happened, you lost $2 million, you can't sleep at night. But what do you mean? You still have 8 million. Why can't you sleep at night? Because you had 10 million. Now you only have 8, so you can't sleep at night. That's just human psychology. So Ben Zoma says, who is the rich person? Who is happy with what they have. And then to be rich is an attitude. It's sort of like an attribute. It's not how much you have, it's how much you feel you have. If I feel like I have everything I need, I'm a rich person. But if I have $10 million and I'm losing sleep at night because Bill Gates has more than me, and that's not right, I'm not a rich person. You understand what I'm saying? That's the problem. There used to be in the synagogue where I grew up in Montreal, there was a fellow who was very rich. He was actually from Romania. And he came to Canada and he was very, very rich. And but because he came from such a poor family when he grew up, he was very, very poor. And then, you know, he some people like that, they work very hard, they make it. And but he didn't like giving charity. He was like a little bit tight. He would a little bit, but not the way he could. And so I guess he was always afraid. You're always afraid you're not going to have money. It becomes like a psychology, you know? That's what I'm saying. But it's okay. His children are very generous. So, but It's like you came from a generation where you didn't know where you would get your next meal, so it creates a psychology. So anyhow, what I'm saying is that you had obviously during the war. So according to Ben Azai, all these are a mindset. So the person who studies, it's the ability to learn from everybody. That's the wise person. The person who's courageous, the ability to control yourself. The person who is rich, the ability to say, I'm okay. The people who are generous are not necessarily the people who are the most rich. But it's people who are generous is because they're the most generous. It's an attitude. Because a person can say, you know what? Today, I have $100. I want to give 20 to somebody who doesn't have $100. So, but another person will say, I have $10,000 today. I don't know, maybe tomorrow I won't. So why should I give it to anybody? Yeah. So it's just, a generous person is a generous person. It's not necessarily how much they have. I think somebody once did study and found that the big givers were not necessarily the richest people. I'm not saying they were necessarily poor, but they weren't the richest. But they were people who felt that this was the right thing to do. There was a fellow whose name was, there's Carnegie Hall in New York City, which is where they have a lot of musical events in Carnegie Hall. There's actually a joke that a fellow is walking in New York City and he says to someone, he says, excuse me, are you from here? The man says, yes. He says, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? He says, oh, you have to practice and practice and practice. But anyhow, so Mr. Carnegie was the wealthiest man in the United States somewhere in like the 1930s, I think it was. He had $66 million. In 1930, $66 million was today sort of like Bill Gates. The world was different in those days. And Carnegie said, when he was an old man, he said, to take $66 million to your grave is a terrible thing. So you have to do something with it. And one of the things he did was he gave the money to build Carnegie Hall, which is a very large um, uh, performance, art performance building. So, but that's on the side. But what Benzoma is saying, to be rich means not to need anything. Not to need anything, that's it. There's a Hasidic story about a certain Rebbe, I forget his name. He was during the time of he was a disciple of the Maggid of Mezrich. The Maggid of Mezrich was one of the main disciples of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. And I forget the name of the Rebbe. I think it was Reb Zusha, but I can't remember. So there was a fellow came over to the Maggid of Mezrich and said to him, I have a lot of problems in life, poverty and things like that. How do I get over it? He says, you go speak to Reb Zusha and he'll tell you how to get over it. He says, really? He says, yeah, try it. Okay. He goes to visit this Reb Zusha and it was a very snowy day and the snow completely covered Reb Zusha's house. It was like hard to get to the door. So he pushes the snow aside and he opens up the door and he sees on the other side Reb Zusha, who's sitting at his desk with a big smile, and he says, how are you? But the house was cold. So he walks in and he says, and he looks around the house, he sees there's hardly any furniture. And it's not exactly the nicest looking house. And Zusha is sitting there. He has a bit of a coat on. There's no fireplace. There's nothing. And it looks like he's quite poor. I mean, even what he has there is very old and some of it is broken. Says Reb Zusha, he says, yes. Tell me, I'm sorry if I'm interfering on a cold day. He says, no, everything's fine. It doesn't bother me. Says, I was told to come here from the Maggid of Mezrich. So, the Maggid of Mezrich told you to come here. Amazing. What a tzaddik, what a saintly person. And why did he want you to see me? Well, he said that you're somebody who understands what poverty and pain is about in life. Says, really? Why would you think that I understand that? I've never experienced poverty or pain ever in life. You understand the story. In other words, it's the way you look at things. You know, if this is okay, if this is what God gave me, and I have no problem. Okay. I don't have, you can say, what? I'm missing money? But hey, I'm healthy. Some people are not, right? Oh, you want to say it's cold outside? Of course it's cold outside. I have a coat. Is that a problem? I don't feel the cold anymore. It depends how you look at life. I'm not saying you have to be poor and you have to whatever, but I'm just saying it's the way you look at life. Some of us, it's not right because this guy has a really fancy car and I don't. I have a regular. Okay, but some people, they don't have a car at all. So, but we always tend to look at what we're missing and we don't have gratitude for what we have. That's one of the problems. It's hard to have gratitude because what bothers us is what we don't have. And we take for granted what we do have. That's just the way life goes. So the rich one is satisfied with their lot. As it says in Psalms 128, if you eat the toil of your hands, which means if you work for something, you achieve it, you are very fortunate and it's good for you. You're fortunate in this world, and it's even good for you in the world to come. So, meaning a person who is able to work, accomplish something, it's a good feeling. So he interprets it to mean that because I accomplished it, I'm happy with what I have. Doesn't exactly say that, but that's the way he's interpreting it. In general, when you feel like you've accomplished something, in general, it's true that a person feels good about it. Getting a gift is nice, but earning the gift is even nicer because then I feel I was able to do that, so I can do it again. But if I got a gift, I might not get it a second time. I think it was Confucius who said, give me a piece of fish and I eat for a day, but teach me how to fish and I eat every day. So there's there is something to that. Okay, let's go back to this. Another thing I wanted to say, which is and the last one is, who is honorable? No honors his fellow. Meaning, if you honor others, you become honorable. But if you're seeking honor, that's not honorable. As it says in Samuel 1, chapter 2, verse 30, for to those who honor me, God says, I honor, and those who scorn me shall be demeaned. Ki mechabdai chabed ubozai yekalu. An honorable person, somebody who honors somebody else. Because if you're looking for honor, that's not honorable. Honor is how other people see you, not how you see yourself. There's a Talmudic saying that says, if you run away from honor, it will catch up to you. So there's a story about this fellow came to the rabbi, says, Rabbi, my whole life I've been running away from honor. How come it never caught up to me? He says, because the problem is, yes, you're running away from honor, but you keep looking behind to see if it's catching up to you. That's the problem. Yes. Okay, so these are statements of Shimon ben Azai. And the idea of, by the way, accomplishment, of doing things. Yagia kapecha ki tochela, King David says in the Psalms, that when you eat from the toil of your own labor, it makes you feel better because this is natural to the human psychology. We want to achieve something. We don't want it given to us for nothing. Or at least most people don't. In fact, the Kabbalist, Moses Chaim Luzzatto, was an Italian Jewish Kabbalist of the 18th century. He died around 1730 or 1740. 1740 must have been. And he said when God created the universe, the first thing he did was create the Garden of Eden. And when God created the universe, he created an incomplete world because it says about the Garden of Eden that God put there Adam and Eve, le'ovda u'leshomra, to work in the garden and to guard over the garden. So they had something to do. And if you look also in the beginning of chapter 2 of Genesis, where it says, that God finished all the works of the heavens. And God finished on the seventh day all the labor that he had done. And he rested on the seventh day and blessed the seventh day and made it holy for all those things that God created to do. So all the commentaries say, what does it mean to create something to do? And it means that God created a universe which is incomplete so that human beings can finish it. That's what it means to create something to do. Somebody else has to do it. Now, what's the point of creating a universe that human beings can finish it? To give some human beings something to do. Because if you have a complete universe, there's nothing to do. But if we can complete the universe, then it becomes our universe. We did it. Even if what we did was only 10%. And then, Luzzatto says that this is necessary because human psychology is, if you're a good person, you don't want to just receive and not do anything. You want to, let's say you're staying at somebody's house as a guest. After a while, you want to do the dishes, you want to help clean up. Maybe there's something else I can do around the house. I'll mow the lawn, I'll clean the windows, because you want to feel like you're doing something, not that they're just giving me all the time and I'm just, a burden on them. So in the world too, we want to do things in the world, and that's why we have the sense of accomplishment of doing things. It's part of our psychology. Yeah, I think it was Einstein who said, I believe in luck, and I've also discovered that the harder I work, the more luck I have. So in that sense, he believed in luck. But it's also the probability goes up the more you do things. I think it was Wayne Gretzky was a Canadian hockey player for the Montreal Canadiens, and he used to score a lot of goals in hockey. So one time somebody said to him, Wayne, what was the worst shot you ever took in hockey on the ice? What was the worst shot? He says, my worst one was the shot that I did not take. That was the worst one. If you don't do anything, that's the worst. But at least if you did something, you tried. You can't do, only if you do things do you make mistakes. If you don't do things, you don't make mistakes. Okay, so who is honorable? One who honors other people. And then other people like them too. It says also in Proverbs, it says, Kemaim hapanim al hapanim, lev ha'adam el ha'adam, which means just as a person looks into the water and sees a reflection of their face in the water, so too are the hearts of human beings. The way you treat somebody, they will treat you. It's like your reflection. So if every time you see somebody, you say, how are you doing? And you give them a big smile, they're going to want to do that to you too. That's just the way it is. But if you're always depressed and you always tell everybody all your problems, but you never want to listen to theirs, you're not going to have any friends. So that's just the way it is. So the way you treat somebody, they treat you too. Okay, let's go on to the next one. That was number 1, and now we jump to number 3. This is also Shimon ben Zoma. It's chapter 4, number 3. Okay, s'il vous plaît. Someone like to read? Anybody? We're 3.
Ok, I'll read.
Thank you.
El obișnuia să spună de asemenea să nu disprețuiești niciun om și să nu nesocotești niciun lucru, căci nu există om care să nu aibă vremea lui și lucru care să nu aibă locul său.
I think that's it. So let's go back here. So, this is an interesting. He also said, do not scorn any person. Don't discount anything. Discount means to say that something is worthless. That's the way you say it in English. In other words, don't, it's an alti bazlit kol adam, which means don't think there's somebody who's not important to you. Don't scorn anybody and say, oh, what do I care about that person? And don't discount anything, because there is no person who does not have their hour, meaning their hour of glory. And there's no thing that does not have its proper place. So everything has a place, and every person has their hour. There used to be a hotel, a kosher hotel in the Catskill Mountains outside New York City, and it was called the Homowax. No, not that one. It was called Grossinger's. And it was a kosher hotel. Now I don't think there are any more kosher hotels in the Catskills, but since it was close to New York, there were a lot of Jews who would go there, especially ones with money. And they used to always say, it's very important to tip the waiters at the Homowax, at the Grossinger's, because in 10 years, they might be your doctor. In other words, you look at somebody, oh, this guy's 22 years old, he's just a waiter. I don't have to say anything. Yeah, but in 10 years, he might be your doctor. Then you're going to want to talk to him. So you never know what a person's place is going to be in life. And in a certain sense, I think life is a little bit like the Truman Show. You remember that movie, The Truman Show? Where it looked like everybody was actually playing a part, and that's what was happening. They were just playing a part in his life. So in a greater sense, I think that the world that we are born into and the people we meet do play a part in our lives. And the role they're going to play is partly determined by ourselves and partly determined by circumstance. So it's good to be nice to people, just in case. So it's a good insurance policy, because you might be really angry at somebody, and then it just turns out that, I don't know, they're either your boss or married to your boss. So you have to watch out. So things like that can happen in life. So never discount anybody. Anybody, the simplest person, you never know, they could play a role in your life. And things too. There are a lot of things. What do I need that? So that's something to, it's also an interesting thing, this idea. It says every person has their time, their hour of glory, and everything has a place. It's interesting. Time is related to a person, and space is related to objects. Of course, objects don't have a concept of space, only human beings do. I'll tell you something that is there's a book called a book of Chaim Vital. Chaim Vital was a disciple of Isaac Luria, the Kabbalist, and he has a personal diary called Sefer HaChezionot, the Book of Visions. All these different things that happen in his life with him and his teacher and other people, whatever. One of these unusual books. He brings a tradition from Isaac Luria, where Luria said, in every month, there is one good day for you. Not everybody who is born under your star, but in every month, there's one good day for you. And in every week, there's also a good day. But he doesn't tell you which day it is, and it's not the same day. Every month it can change. So he says, so somebody said to me one time, so how do I know what day it is? I said, that's really easy. Let's say you're in Tel Aviv and you're going downtown and it's now, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you have a meeting. And right in front of the building where you have the meeting, a car pulls out, and now you have parking right in front of that building. That's the day. Because that doesn't happen in Tel Aviv. Now, if you see that happening, go for it. If this is your boss, ask for the raise. I don't know. If you normally buy a lottery ticket, buy it on that day. But sometimes, you know, it happens sometimes. I found it sometimes that when something goes well, everything goes well. And then there's some days one thing goes wrong, and then another thing goes wrong, another thing, and you say like, why did I get out of bed today? I mean, I accomplished nothing. But there seems to go like that. It's like I can't explain why. It's like one thing goes into another thing, and then either for good or for bad. So anyhow, so Ben Zoma says, yeah, every person has their hour. Every person has their hour might mean vis-a-vis you have their hour, or it also might mean they have their hour of glory. Because the very fact that you're here on this world means that you have a reason why you're here in this world. So you might not even know what your hour of glory was or will be. But nobody gets born without having a reason to be here. That's for sure. There's a fellow, his name is Neil deGrasse Tyson. He is an American astronomer. You can see him a lot on YouTube. They like interviewing him. Interesting fellow, Neil deGrasse Tyson. So he said, people have to realize if you were born, that means that you won the lottery. Because from a biological point of view, the chances of you being born from all the billions of sperm that were passed over from the father to the mother means that you won the lottery. So obviously, if you're in this world and it's because you won the lottery, there must be a reason why you're in this world. I thought that was very cute. It's not a good idea. So we should always look at the fact that we're here, we won the lottery, so there's some reason. So obviously there's something that we can do that nobody else can do, or else why would we have to be the one? Why not somebody else? Right? Okay, it's nice to think that way. I'm going back. Okay, the next one is number 12, and that is down here. Rabbi Eliezer. Yes.
Rabbi Eliezer, fiul lui Șamua, spunea: demnitatea discipolului tău trebuie să fie pentru tine la fel de prețioasă precum propria ta demnitate. Demnitatea colegului tău, precum venerația față de mentorul tău, iar venerația față de mentorul tău, precum venerația față de rai.
Okay. That sounded good. Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Shamua, said, the dignity of your student should be as precious to you as your own. The kavod is the term used in Hebrew, which means you should honor your student, just like you honor yourself. And the dignity of your colleague should be the way you treat your master too, your teacher. And the way you treat your teacher should be like the fear of heaven. Because the teacher is teaching you the word of God, so you have to have a certain respect. I think this idea of dignity in teaching is a lost value. When I was in 8th grade, I was in a school. It was a very religious school. And when the teacher came in, all the students had to stand up. And I'd never seen that before. That was when I first came to Israel. In Canada, we didn't have that. But I thought that was very interesting. And it's also because it was a very religious school. Not all the schools in Israel. But the idea of standing up for your teacher is an interesting idea because it teaches you respect, and if you respect the teacher, you're going to respect what the teacher is teaching. I can tell you too, I teach at Bar Ilan, which is in Ramat Gan, which is like a suburb of Tel Aviv. But for 3 years, I taught in Ashkelon, which is a coastal city in Israel, and less developed. In those days, it was the 1990s, and it was just less developed. But the students that I would get in Ashkelon, because they were also studying more practical things, maybe accounting, maybe to be a nurse. It was something more practical, and but there was a lot of respect for the professors there. The fact that they came to college, which maybe their parents were not able to do, they had a lot of respect for the teachers or the professors, and I found that a nice thing. And one time I taught in a school, in a middle school, age 13, 12, 13. And in that school in Israel, unfortunately, the students were calling the teachers by their first name. So one of the students come over and says, Rafi, can I ask you a question? I said, no, you can't. So he said, why not? I said, because you can't call me Rafi because I'm not your friend, I'm your teacher. And he didn't understand it because the other teachers didn't act that way. They said, how am I supposed to call you? I said, look, okay, call me Rabbi Rafi. Call me Teacher Rafi, but just don't call me Rafi. I said, okay, that was the deal. But sometimes you have to teach children or young people to respect knowledge. And it's not necessarily the person, it's the person representing the knowledge. Or if you think something is holy, like the Bible, then the person teaching, you're showing them respect because you're showing them respect for what they're teaching you. That's it. You don't know who they are, but at least you're showing them respect for what they're teaching you. So he says, you have to show a certain dignity to your students, or else they won't take you seriously. Because how are they going to show you dignity if you don't show them? If you don't honor your students, why should they honor you? If you treat them poorly, they might pretend to honor you, but they won't really honor you. But if you treat them well, they'll be very happy to treat you well. As I said before, the way a person looks at somebody else, they look at you too. So here the word dignity in Hebrew is kavod, which means honor. Show honor to your students, it will honor you. Show honor to your colleagues, as if they are your teacher, will also honor you. It's very good. It's very important to compliment people, not to take them for granted. I try to do that a lot, or at least to remember. Like, if I have a colleague who wrote a nice article and I noticed it, I'll say, that was a good article. If it was, I won't make it up. If I didn't like it, I'll say, well, it must have taken you a long time to write. But I won't say something good about something unless I really mean it. But I won't ever say something negative because, they gave it hopefully their best. But when you say something nice to somebody, then they want to say something nice about you too. And it's just an important skill in life. And yeah, that's all. That's the pirkei avot. There's a lot of these type of things. And your teacher, if you have a teacher, and this is the person you want to study from, they should have like the awe of heaven, which means take what they're saying very seriously, because they're trying to do it the best of their ability. And that's important. My father was a rabbi in Montreal. And in the synagogue, there was a school. At first, there was a Sunday school, which is the day that the children had off. So that was the only option. So it was a Sunday school, and they used to come also in the evenings one time. And then eventually it turned into a day school where it was a regular school where half a day they had, let's call it the regular studies, and half a day they had Hebrew studies. So especially when it's a Sunday school, they used to ask my father to come as the rabbi of the synagogue and speak to the young children who are anywhere from I don't know, could be as 7 or 8 years old until bar mitzvah, usually, bat mitzvah, 12, 13. That was when it was a Sunday school. So my father would come with all his regalia. He would come with a gown, like there were in my father's synagogue, they wore the black gown of the German rabbis because it was founded by German Jews in the 19th century. And he wore one of those caps that also the German rabbis used to wear. And he would come with his prayer shawl, his talit. And so the children would be very impressed. We have this whole uniform. It's a rabbi's uniform. So a friend of mine who we sort of grew up with in Montreal, but one day he says to me, my father passed away 6 years ago. And he said, Rafi, I want you to know that I was in that school when I was 10 years old. And one day your father came to visit all the kids. And he came in with his gown and with his hat and this. And when he walked in the door, we were like shocked. Is this God? Is this an angel? That's the way I felt as a child. It's like, and then he started talking to us and we listened. So, okay, it doesn't obviously have to be like that. But I'm just saying it opens you up for the possibility that that person is going to say something important. And then, of course, you hope they do, because if they don't, it ruins the moment. But if they do say something important, you might actually remember. So I never put down uniforms or things like that. They're not important, but they can't hurt. That's what I always say. Okay. Now we have Samuel the Small. This is over here. Samuel cel Mic.
Spunea: să nu te bucuri atunci când dușmanul tău cade, când el se va împiedica, inima ta să nu se umple de bucurie. Dumnezeu va vedea acest lucru, iar aceasta va fi neplăcut ochilor săi și el își va reîntoarce mânia sa de la el asupra ta. Din Proverbe 24, cu 17-18.
Yes. Okay. This is very unusual thing, and I'll explain why. So Samuel the Small. Who is Samuel the Small? The Talmud says about Samuel the Small that the Small was not his family name. He was referred to as Samuel the Small, Hakatan, because he was very humble. And because of that, he would make himself appear small, meaning he never said great things about himself, ever. So
Why didn't they call him Hatzanua?
I don't know, but that was the term. I don't know. He was called Shmuel Hakatan.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, that would be Samuel Klein. Klein is Hakatan, right?
Klein, yeah.
And big is gross. So we have those names also in Romania. Right. Samuel Hakatan. So Samuel the Small, who was very, let's say, very sensitive and very modest person, said, when your enemy falls, do not rejoice. When he stumbles, don't be so happy, because God may see and may be displeasing in his eyes, and he may turn his anger against you. This is actually a verse in Proverbs. This is exactly what the verse says. The verse says, when your enemy falls, here's the quote, do not rejoice. What does it mean, by the way, when your enemy falls, do not rejoice? Because your enemy fell now, maybe tomorrow he'll be strong again, and then he'll want to get back at you for rejoicing. So you can be happy that your enemy fell, but don't overdo it, because when you do things in your face, what's called it, then people want to get revenge.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So it's not a smart thing to do.
Well, it's hard not to be happy.
Yes. But in our tradition, when your enemy falls, so we thank God. But you don't want to be too happy. That's what I say.
Yes, that's the key. That's right.
You have to be careful about that. In the Middle East, among the Arabs, when their enemy falls, they pass out baklava, which is like, a sweet pastry.
Yeah.
Some of the Sephardic Jews do that too. It's just a cultural thing. And there was actually In Israel, there was actually a discussion about it one time during the war after a certain event that happened, specifically the event of the pagers, which became very popular. And people were saying maybe we should not rejoice because, we're not always happy that we have to do what we do. When you have to do something, you have to do it. Doesn't mean you have to be happy. But you have to be grateful. There's a difference between grateful to God or being happy that something happened. What do I want to say about that? Anyhow, so he says, so you have to be careful about those type of things. When your enemy falls, do not rejoice. When he stumbles, do not be too gladdened. And yeah, that's it. And there's a saying one time of Golda Meir, who was, of course, prime minister in the 1970s, the end of 60s till 70, till 74. So she once said after the Yom Kippur War that even if the day comes that we can forgive the Egyptians for killing our children, the soldiers, we will never forgive them for forcing us to kill theirs.
Yes, that's right.
And because you never want to become like your enemy if you think that your enemy is evil. You just don't want to become like them. That's all. But that doesn't mean you have to be pacifist. I always say justice is not revenge. When a court does justice, they're not taking revenge. They're just doing justice. People make that mistake. So, okay. So, question is, why is Samuel Small quoting a verse in Proverbs, and then it says it in his name? Sounds like plagiarism. What's going on?
It doesn't sound so small.
Yes. So what this means is, you see in the Ethics of the Fathers, very often the statements that are said by these people, they said many things in their lives. So very often these 2 or 3 statements are in their names are something which represented them. So when it says Samuel the Small would say, it means he would quote this verse a lot because this is what he believed in. That's what it means Samuel the Small would say. He was that type of person who would quote this a lot because this was one of his mottos in life. Okay, let's look at the next one on number 1. This is from the next chapter. Okay, Bavakasha, Rabbi Elazar HaKapar.
Spunea, invidia, pofta trupească și mândria distanțează un om de lume. Should I go
That was a short one.
Yes.
It's like, did I get everything here? So we did this and go. Okay. Envy, Hebrew, kin'ah. Ta'ava, in English, lust.
Mhm.
And the pursuit of fame drives a person from the world. By the way, in Hebrew, Adam actually means a person. Because if you look in Genesis chapter 5, it says, Eile toldot hashamayim va'aretz bihibaram. Excuse me. Show it to you one moment. Find it for a second. Genesis 5. There's a difference between Ish and Adam. Ish means a man and Isha means a woman. Adam really is mankind or a person. Genesis 5. Take it here because they have the Hebrew too. This is the book. You see it?
No?
You see this? Yes, no?
No, we still see the Proverbs.
Oh, okay. Now you can see it. It is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God, he made him. Male and female, he created them and blessed them and called their name Adam. See what it says here? Male and female, he created them, blessed them, and called their name Adam the day that they were created. Which means that actually Adam is the connotation for the male and the female together as a unit. So that's why every time it says Adam, I translated person. Because it could be male or female. It's true that in the biblical story of chapters 3 and 4, Adam is the man and Eve, Chava, is the woman. But here it says specifically that in general, Adam can mean male and female together.
Perhaps because directly and indirectly, Eve was, they were created from Adama.
Well, Adam was created from Adama, and
That's
Eve
right.
was created from Adam.
I know, that's why I said indirectly. So
Right. So Adam probably is from the word Adama. That's very possible. And Eve is created from Adam. So yes, they were a unit. If Eve was created from Adam, they were a unit at one point. There's actually a midrash that says that Adam and Eve originally were one unit, androgynous, and God had to separate them into two. And the interesting thing is that this same story is found in the Symposium of Plato. He brings the same story that the first human being was androgynous, and the demiurgus had to separate them into two. So it's interesting how you have a rabbinic interpretation who has a similar story to a Greek story found in Platonic writings. But yes, this is what, just wanted to point that out. So let's go back to this. I think that was the end of it. So envy, kin'ah, lust, ta'ava, the pursuit of fame, drive a person from the world, which means there's certain things which is just not healthy. So it's going to force you to the sidelines of society. One is envy. If you can't control envy, somebody is more beautiful than me, somebody is richer than me, somebody's more famous, I can't take it. I want to be that. Control yourself, okay? Because it's going to drive you crazy. Just try to be you, because there's something that you can do that that person can't do. You'll figure it out eventually. Lust, also, in Hebrew, tava in Hebrew could be the lust for money, the lust for food, the lust for somebody from the opposite sex. It could be anything that you lose control of. And when you lose control, you lose yourself. And fame. I need to be famous. I made a YouTube channel. I don't have 1 million people yet. And if I get 1 million, I want 2. No, I want to be viral, maybe 30 million. And then I can get money, and then I'll be both rich and...
I think Trump is the perfect picture.
I think Trump, in a sense, is a person who, I would say, against all expectations, was a pretty good president in the first time around. I can't tell you yet how he's going to be in the second time around because it didn't happen yet. But I'm just saying, I think it was against all expectations because people knew who he was and they thought that he would not be serious, but he rose to the occasion. Some people, they realize, this is a hard job. I have to do it.
Yes, but fame is everything for him. He must be the...
that, yes. Yes. He is a megalomaniac. That's correct. That's true. That is his fault. It's a fault. Yeah. But I'm saying despite that, that's why nobody thought he would be a good president. And surprisingly, the first time around he was. I'm hoping the second time he will too, because there's a lot to fix in the United States. So I'm hoping. There was a lot of damage done, both in the United States and Canada. And okay, countries aren't perfect, but when you happen to be a superpower, it's even more dangerous.
Right.
So, especially since there are a few other superpowers which are going in the wrong direction, like China and Russia.
Mhm.
So you need another one to balance it out. So there's certain things that push you to the sidelines of society when you're always envious, and people feel it too, and they don't want to be around you. It's like you can't control yourself. Or lust. I need to pursue. I need that fame. I need that money. I need control yourself. It's and in the end, the Talmud says in Sukkah, "Ein adam met v'chatzi ta'avato biyado," which means a person dies without even finding half of what he desired in life. Because when you desire, you never get everything. That's the nature of desiring. That's why it's so important to learn, be happy with what you have, because then you learn control. And the way that my father used to say, learn to be happy with what you have is to learn to be grateful. When you learn to be grateful, you look at things from a certain perspective, which just makes life easier.
So there's a difference of perception from to want and to the desire.
Okay. You're saying desire is much stronger, more passionate.
Not always in a good way.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
So
It's
that's why
okay.
it
Right. It's
says,
okay to want something, but it's not okay if you lose sleep overnight because of
that's right.
it. Because in the end, you'll just stress out, and the stress will kill your health. And you might get it one day, but you won't be healthy to use it properly.
Or like you said, due to this craziness, you might not get it.
Or you might not get it. Yes. Yeah. You know, there's if you look on the internet, there's called the 27 Club. Have you ever heard of the 27 Club? The 27 Club are famous singers and actors who died at the age of 27.
And they are a lot.
And there are a lot of them. There are also some a little bit more, a little bit less, but 27 seems to be the mean age. And very often it's young people who became musical stars or Hollywood stars or television stars at a young age, and they couldn't deal with the fame, being famous, because they were just regular people who happened to have a talent, had a good voice, they were a good actor, or they were a good musician, and now they're on the stage, and the whole world wants to know what they have to say about politics. But they're just regular people. I mean, they have a talent. I'm not saying no, but people confuse fame with somebody who's supposed to, with areas that they obviously cannot deal with, and some people couldn't deal with that, and they start taking drugs, and they lose it, and things like that. And you take the drugs because you can't deal with it, and sometimes you can't deal with it because if I'm now famous, I should be happy. Why am I not?
Mhm.
But we know that fame and money doesn't buy happiness. Happiness is something you have to develop. And it's the way you see yourself. Because if you're not happy with yourself, you're never going to be happy with anybody.
Yes.
So, yeah. Okay, so those were the things I wanted to read from Pirkei Avot. There's much more in Pirkei Avot, but I thought that would be a good example of some rabbinic literature, which is just about life. Did we do everything here, or did I miss something? I think we did everything, yeah.
Can you talk to us about the test?
The test will be multiple choice.
How many questions?
27, 30.
Okay.
I will try to see if I can try to give you some lead questions to prepare. I have to see if I can do that. But obviously, I don't know. Did I send you this these sources? Does everybody have it? I thought I did. Okay, I'll put it on the WhatsApp. I thought I put it one time on the here on the what do you call it again?
Let me check again. Perhaps I'm mistaken.
Once put it on the chat here, I think. But, okay, I'll put it on the WhatsApp. Okay. Maybe with the time left, I want to read one other story. This is taken from the Talmud. Should be here somewhere. Not this one. We'll go back to that. No. I have here different sources from the Talmud. I'll just end off with another story, which, even though it's not like the ethics of the fathers, it comes to tell story. It might be right at the end. I think I brought it at the end.
No, the last file we got from you was symbolism in the book of Ruth.
Okay, so I'll give this to you then. Okay, this is a story right at the end here. It's called the Rami bar Tamrei story. It is taken from the Talmud in the tractate of Chulin, which actually deals with the laws of keeping kosher. And we'll read the story, and then I'll show you that the story has two levels to it. That's over here. Okay, can you see it, by the way?
Yes.
Rami bar Tamrei story? Okay. Okay, as an introduction, as I said, the Talmud in Chulin discusses the laws of keeping kosher. As you know, all the laws of keeping kosher are really regarding meat products, because there are no plants which are not kosher. It's only meat products which could be not kosher. There's certain animals which we eat, and it's specifically the ruminating animals. They chew their cud, and they have split hoofs. Those are the ones that Jews eat, like a cow, baka, and a lamb and a goat, right? Those are so there are certain animals that we eat, and we also slaughter them in a certain fashion, very sharp knife, and we remove the blood after they're killed, because you're not allowed to eat the blood. You remove it by salting the. Okay. Now there are different parts of the animal, and there's a question whether you're allowed to eat the udder. The udder, I don't know how you say that in Romanian. I can tell you though. The udder is where the cow's milk comes from.
Uger.
Udder, yes. That's where the cow's milk comes from. It's called the udder. And the reason why there's a question whether you can eat the udder is because the udder is meat, but it had milk in it.
Mm-hmm.
Jews don't eat meat and milk together. So the question is, can you eat the udder of the cow? So some people say you can, because what you do is you cut the udder, you wash it. When you wash it, all the milk comes out, and then you salt it to remove the blood, and then you cook it. So what's the problem? It's just another piece of meat. The fact that when the cow is alive, that's where the milk came from, doesn't matter. And others would say, well, maybe some of the milk is still there, so some people wouldn't eat it. Okay, that's the introduction to the story. There is a town in Babylonia which was called Sura, and another town which was called Umbedita. These towns had Jewish communities. In this story is being told somewhere around the 4th century. And in these communities, they had academies of study. Now, in Sura, Jews did not eat the udder at all. Just didn't. Because as I said, because the udder contained milk, So they didn't want to eat it because it's like meat and milk together. But in the city of Pumbedita, they did eat it because they said you just cut it, wash it, salt it, and then you cook it. What's the problem? Now, this fellow's name was Rami bar Tamrei, who is also called sometimes Rami bar Dikuli, was from the city of Pumbedita, where they did eat the udder. And one day he happened to travel to the city of Sura, where they don't eat the udder. On the eve of Yom Kippur, on the eve of the Day of Atonement. You following?
Yes.
Okay. When the people, now it was the eve of Yom Kippur, the eve of the Day of Atonement. Now the townspeople took all the udders of the animals. Which animals? The animals that they were going to eat. We have a big meal right before Yom Kippur. So let's say if the sun sets around 6 o'clock, so people will have a meal at 4:30, they'll finish at 5:30 or 5:45, and then they'll walk to the synagogue. So people were slaughtering animals because those days you would do it at home because people were agriculturalists. They were slaughtering animals, and if they slaughtered a cow, they would throw out the udder because in that town they didn't eat it, the town of Surah. So the townspeople threw the udders of the animals, threw them away into the garbage. And this Rami collected them and ate them. So whether it was the udder of a sheep or the udder of a cow, he went to the garbage, which was probably outside the city, the garbage dump. He picked them up, he washed them, salted them, and he cooked them to eat. Okay? When he did that, people started noticing that this fellow is picking up the udders and eating them. But here in Pumbedita, we don't eat. In Surah, we don't eat the udders. So he's wrong. He's not supposed to be eating it. So the people in the town brought him before Rabbi Chisda, who was the chief rabbi of the town, because they thought he was doing the wrong thing. And it's the day before Yom Kippur. How dare you eat udders when in this town we don't do it? So Rabbi Chisda said to him, why did you do this? Why did you eat the udders of the animal? We don't do that. So Rami replied, I come from a place which is called Pumbedita, and there Rabbi Judah is the chief rabbi, and he permits us to eat the udders. Well, that's why I was doing it. He says, I know it's a controversy. The town I come from, the rabbi says it's fine. So Rabbi Chisda said to him, do you not accept the ruling of the Talmud that says when a person arrives in a new town, he has to adopt the restrictions of the new town? And even both the restrictions of the town where he was and the restrictions of the new town that he entered. So even if in your town it's different, you're now in our town. You should keep the restrictions of our town as long as you're here. So Rami replied, he said, when I ate the udders, I was outside the city's boundary, so it didn't apply to me. I was outside. It was the garbage dump. It was outside the town, so it doesn't apply to me. The fact that people saw me, that's not my problem. So then he said, well, when you found those udders, how did you roast them? We're outside the town. You didn't have an oven. How did you roast it? He said, I used kernels of grapes and I lit a fire. Leftover kernels of grapes, like the seeds of the grapes that were in the garbage dump. I lit them on fire and that's how I roasted it. So Rabbi Chisda says to him, well, maybe these kernels of grapes used for wine for idol worshippers. So, and maybe that's the wrong thing you did. He was looking to see if he could find something. He replied, there's no way. These were kernels of grapes that were sitting for more than 12 months. Nobody would have touched them. They weren't even edible. He says, well, maybe they were stolen. He said, no, the owners would have certainly abandoned all rights to them because there was already lichen among them, like worms among them. So who would have said, how could you call that stolen? Who would have wanted them? Okay, so Rabbi Chisda couldn't catch him on anything. So then he noticed that he was not wearing his tefillin. Tefillin are the boxes that Jews wear on their head and on their arm when they pray. But in antiquity, in the time of the Talmud, a scholar would wear them all day long. So he said, Rabbi Chisda noticed he was not wearing tefillin. He said to him, why don't you wear tefillin if you're such a scholar? He replied, because I'm suffering from gastritis, bowel issues. And since I have gastritis and I run to the bathroom a lot, I don't wear the tefillin because it's a holy thing and I'll have to take it off and put it on. And that's why I'm not wearing it. That's actually the law. If you have gastritis, you're not supposed to put on tefillin. Rabbi Judah said the one who suffers from the bowels is exempt from wearing the tefillin. Okay. He further noticed that this guy was not wearing the tzitzit, the fringes on his garment. In Hebrew, it's called the tzitzit. It's mentioned in the book of Numbers, chapter 16. The fringes on the garment. So he said, why aren't you wearing fringes on your garment if you're a scholar? So he said, well, my rabbi, Rabbi Judah, said that a borrowed coat for the first 30 days is exempt from fringes. And I borrowed this coat. It's not mine. I borrowed it from somebody before I came here. All this was going on. Man came to this court because all this was happening in the court, Rabbi Chisda. They brought a man to the court who was not honoring his father and his mother, which, of course, according to the Torah, you have to honor your father and mother. They bound him and they wanted to flog him as a punishment. And then Rami intervened on this guy's behalf and said, leave him alone, because it has been taught that every commandment which carries its reward by its side is not under the jurisdiction of man, but under the jurisdiction of a heavenly court. Not the court below, but only the court above. And it says about honoring your parents that you shall lengthen your days. And we have a tradition that every time there says something in the Bible where it says that the reward, it means that the punishment is in heaven and not court below. So if somebody didn't honor their parents, it's something punishable by God and not by an earthly court. So Rabbi Chisda said to him, I see you're very sharp. You seem to know all these things. Rami answered him, if you would come to Rabbi Judah's school in Pumbedita, where I'm from, I would show you how sharp I am. It's the story. Let me go over the story in case you forgot. There's a fellow whose name is Rami bar Dikule, Rami bar Tamrei. And he is from the city of Pumbedita, where people eat the udder of the cow, the uda. And he goes to visit the people of Surah the day before Yom Kippur, before the Day of Atonement. And in Surah, they don't eat the udder. But he knew that that's the way he could have a meal, because he went to the garbage, and when everybody was throwing out the udders of the cows and the sheep, he picked them up, he washed them, cut it open to get rid of the milk and wash that out, salted them, and ate them over a fire, which he made over the seeds of grapes that happened to be also in the garbage dump. And then somebody didn't like that, and they reported on him to Rabbi Chisda and brought him to the court. This man has been eating the udder the day before Yom Kippur, and we don't allow that in our city. And then you have this going on back and forth with Rabbi Chisda, trying to catch him, where is it from? And why do you do it? And why don't you take the stringencies? Says, well, I wasn't in the city. That's why I didn't have to follow the stringencies of your city. I was outside the city. And he starts saying, okay, well, why aren't you wearing tzitzit? It's a borrowed coat. Why aren't you wearing the tefillin? I have gastritis. I can't wear the tefillin today. You have all these different things. What's the story about? What do you think it's about? What is the point of the story?
To show that every rule or law can be broken in a smart way, or to
Well, I don't know if broken, but
go around it.
let's say that's what it looks like. He has all these questions, and this guy's smart enough to answer all his questions and explain why, in his case, it's not a concern. But what's really going on in this story? What I call the inner reason for the story.
Perhaps not every rule is necessary.
Okay, I think you're too focused on the rules here, and I'm
Okay.
focused on the story, on the human story that's going on.
Human story.
Let's take the story from the beginning. You have a fellow, his name is Rami bar Tamrei. He goes to the city of Sura, and it's the day before Yom Kippur. Now, Yom Kippur is a fast day, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't know if you know it, but right before Yom Kippur, the afternoon service is usually done early so that people can go and have a meal at home and then come back for the evening service. So I'm assuming he went to the synagogue and people saw him around. And then he went, when they left to go to eat, that's when he went to the garbage dump to pick up the udders to fry them over the fire and eat something. Why is he eating udders in the garbage?
Because no one invited him somewhere else to eat or something.
And right, but why doesn't he go to a restaurant?
Doesn't have money. I don't know.
Right, he doesn't have money. This is a poor person. Even the coat he's wearing, he borrowed. Okay, he comes and they see a poor person who's eating in the garbage dump. Instead of saying, "Would you like to join us for the meal before the fast day?" They're worried about what he's eating. And in our town, we don't eat that. That's the only thing they can worry about.
So instead
Yes,
of
but
helping, they're judging.
They're being very judgmental of somebody who is very discreet about the fact that he has no money and he can't afford to buy any food. But he knew in advance that if he goes to the garbage dump in this town, which is probably why he went to the town in the first place, because in his town he was too embarrassed to say that he had no food before Yom Kippur. And he didn't want to force people to invite him. So he went to this town where he knew they threw out the udders in the garbage dump. He's willing to eat from the garbage dump and not to disgrace himself that everybody knows that he's poor. He can't afford the coat that he's wearing. You know what his name is in the story? Rami bar Tamrei. Does anybody know what tamarim are in Hebrew?
dates.
Dates. How do you say dates again in Romanian?
Urmale.
Urmale. They call him Rami de bar Tamrei. You know why? Because in Babylonia there were a lot of palm trees, a lot of urmale trees, and so dates were the cheapest thing in Babylonia because there were so many of the trees, they sold it for next to nothing. So all the poor people could buy dates. So Rami bar Tamrei, who was very poor, that's all he could eat was dates. You know what happens when you eat dates all day long?
Yes, you have gastritis.
It makes you go to the bathroom. It's just like prunes.
Yes.
So you're running to the bathroom all the time. That's why he couldn't wear the tefillin, because that's all he ate was dates. That's all he could afford. But he was always running to the bathroom, so he couldn't put the tefillin. So they used to call him Rami Ormale, Rami bar Tamrei. By the way, even dikule in Hebrew means a date tree. Tamrei is the actual Ormale, and dekel is the name of the tree. It's either tamar or dekel.
But he also seemed very smart. So,
well, you can be smart and poor.
I don't know.
Yeah. So obviously he used to go to the classes because he was interested in studying, but he happened to be a poor guy. That
And
happened in life. He didn't
wasn't
have
he
money.
supposed to pay for those lessons?
Not necessarily. Some people taught for free in the synagogues. Yeah, that happens too. So anyhow, the point is that sometimes you can lose focus. You see a poor person and you're so focused on why is he doing this instead of looking at the person and saying maybe he needs help. That's what the point of the story, the deeper point of the story is, that we focus on the wrong things and we don't realize that sometimes there's other reasons why people do things that we find unusual. And if you can understand what the other thing is, maybe that person actually needs help.
True.
Yeah. So that was what I wanted to say. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I think that's about it, right? It's 7:30 already.